Overall, your perspective on this story?
We, from the Institute of Safety Professionals of Nigeria, we are always moved when we have incidents of this nature. Now, first of all, this is an issue that cuts across the country, Nigeria. It's not just Lagos. We have these cases, some of them unreported. Yeah. But now we're looking at school, establishment of a school. The protocol is so much. If the Institute of Safety Professionals of Nigeria could be queried on whether it has statutory jurisdiction to establish a safety training with a tertiary institution of Lagos State, you know, if they can be so meticulous, you know, to probe into such, why has it been difficult for them to actually know where the schools are sited? Every private school in Lagos pays money to the government, and there's a procedure for establishment and endorsement.
I imagine part of that is knowing where the school is located.
Exactly. So for us in the Institute, before we endorse any company as a corporate member of the Institute, we must make sure the company has a functional safety policy, and that the company has professional persons, safety professional, to implement such policy, you know, and then also monitor compliance by its own staff. So Lagos State government, it's a big government. It's not just a government in Nigeria. It's almost running West African coast, the West Coast. Now, if you look at what happened yesterday, some parents would have lost more than one child. And then the government has emergency services. Now, the issue of collapsed buildings has been there for long.
It's certainly not new in Lagos.
It's not new in Lagos. So it is one of those issues that are very reoccurring. And it means some very good proactive measures in terms of contingency management, because it's about making provisions. Such provisions are expected to be in place, on standby, to be mobilized at shortest notice. Now, we didn't see that, but I still praise the operatives, the emergency operatives. When they arrived, they tried to do a lot, but how could they have done much more than what they did, looking at the nature of the building and how the structure collapsed?
Clearly, when things like this happen, there are calls for reforms. The governor is the CEO of the state, if you like, and at the end of the day, they'll say the buck stops at his table. Your perspective on the reforms that are critical to ensure not just that such buildings are not in this state, but beyond that, emergency services. You should think that those should be basic in a state like Lagos.
Yeah, emergency services. I think Lagos has the best of such among the states of Nigeria. So if the best is leaving so much to be desired, then you can imagine the deplorable state of such services in other states of the Federation. Now, information has certain characteristics. Information must be true, must be complete, must be timely. Now, was there any information? Because they have monitoring group going around Lagos, reporting something every day to somebody, somewhere. Was there any report regarding the state of such building? I understand some buildings around that area had been marked for demolition, and people had been asked to leave. And in some cases, people left and came back. So who is the person monitoring all this? And what actions? So we need to be proactive, not always standing by to rush in when it has happened, especially when human lives involved. Now you look at the situation now. Even the proprietress of the school, who would have been the one the government would be holding responsible now, died in the incident. Now, so many people cannot tell you that building was a school building. I find it difficult to call it a school building because it is a business place.
It certainly wasn't designed for that.
Yeah. And then structurally, from the way it collapsed, you can see that the whole foundation crumbled. Why? Most probably because the beams and pillars were not, by design and construction, meant to carry the superstructure it carried. So it caved in under the crushing weight of the superstructure. So a whole lot can be discovered through a real root cause analysis, because at the end of the day, you hear everybody wants to talk from government angle, but the professionals are supposed to be involved in the investigation of that.
If we can quickly just come back again to the issue of emergency service response services. At the end of the day, it's a public service. You expect that the state or the local governments will be responsible for that. In your view, how can we fix this? How can we nip this in the bud?
Yeah, the way to go about this, looking at Lagos State, whether the emergency involved collapsed structure or fire, flood, and so on. Now, we say prevention is better than cure. Now, contingency has to do with problem solving through making provisions. The provision in this case now is emergency response service. Should be on standby. So how to go about this is to make sure the monitoring group, because you cannot say you are standing by a building because you know this building will collapse. But if you sensed that this building may collapse, you evacuate everybody there. And you avoid sentiment. Because one of the reasons why we have this type of problems is that maybe the emergency services were not considered necessary in that area, on the assumption that the building is okay, there will be no problem. And you know, sometimes we become unnecessarily complacent. We say, God forbid, it will not happen. And even when you point out at something that is the risk there, and somebody will tell you, don't confess evil, it will not happen. And eventually it happened. But even when you know it will not happen, you are supposed to make provisions. The reason why you have a fire extinguisher in your house is not because you know there will be fire the next morning.
Right.